Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. But I want to get to the other big result from Tuesday night. And it came at Memorial Gym in Nashville, Tennessee, where the Kentucky Wildcats, and listen, was I one of many who left them for dead? I was. Was I one that did a video on Instagram saying the Calipari era was over after the loss to South Carolina? Oh, I sure did. Well, Kentucky just won its fourth straight game, beating Vanderbilt in a game that they absolutely dominated from start to finish. Final score 69-53. Kentucky was up by 9 points at halftime, and they never really let up from there. And so what I want to say about Kentucky, and I talked about it a little bit on Monday's show, I was somebody who, even when Kentucky beat Tennessee, even when they started to turn a corner, I wasn't totally sold on this Kentucky team because I have gone with the ebbs and flows of Kentucky. And I think this is just part of covering college basketball. Kentucky is, I would argue, the biggest brand in college basketball, the biggest fan base. So you kind of ebb and flow with the fan base. It's like covering the NBA. You got to talk Lakers every day. And so when the Lakers are good, you get really high on the Lakers. And when the Lakers are bad, you get really low on them. And so I bring it up because, listen, I was a guy that was saying, listen, I'm not going to pretend that I did not do a rant on Instagram saying the John Calipari era is dead as we know it. But they've now won 4 straight. And I would argue that Tuesday night was the most impressive. Let me explain why. The Tennessee game 2 weeks ago, nobody expects. Okay. The Georgia game last week at home, okay, that's a game that it was close at the half. They could have lost that game. Texas A&M was close. This was the most confident that I've seen this team play. And here's the thing that I would take it a step further. Beyond that, Kentucky has officially found its lineup. And its lineup is playing those 3 guards. I know that they don't technically start. I know that the starting lineup is the 2 forwards, Toppin and Livingston, alongside Oscar Tshiebwe, with Cason Wallace and CJ Frederick in the backcourt. But we all know that the lineup that everybody wants is with Antonio Reeves, the transfer guard, off the bench in that lineup. And it works. I could go on and on. I'm not going to. But this was a Kentucky team that, again, a few weeks ago scored 53 points in a loss to UCLA. This was a Kentucky team that scored 68 points at home to South Carolina. And this was a team that went to Vanderbilt, controlled the tempo from start to finish, dominated the game 69-53. But most importantly, they won 69-53 in a game. How about this? They attempted 2 free throws the entire game, 2 free throws. And so what stands out to me about Kentucky, they found the lineup. They have unlocked everything. And they are now on a 4-game winning streak going into Kansas. This is a team that, I'll just say it. Listen, I don't want to overreact, but I'll say a couple things about this. One, you start to look around college basketball. I'm just asking you, with the way Kentucky is playing right now, a couple things stand out. Just in the SEC, I've said on this show, I'm not going to back down from it. I think Alabama might be the best team in the country right now. But you get past Alabama, who in the SEC is better than Kentucky right now? Because Tennessee is right now, as I record, 6-1 in SEC play. Kentucky won in Knoxville. Texas A&M is 5-1 in SEC play. Kentucky beat Texas A&M at Rupp Arena. And so this team is trending in the right direction in the SEC. But I'll say it nationally. Tell me the team that this Kentucky team can't beat in college basketball this year. I don't think it exists. Kansas is a top 10 team. They're on a 3-game losing streak. We're going to find out about Kansas because they go to Rupp Arena this weekend. Tennessee's a top 5 team. Kentucky beat them. Kansas State's a top 5 team. I think they might not have a single player who's ever played a tournament game on that roster. Houston is really good, but they're not unbeatable. Purdue's really good, but they're not unbeatable. Arizona's a top 10 team that's already taken losses to Washington State and Oregon. So I could go on and on. But Kentucky has found the lineup, and I just think this team is turning a corner. What I would finally say about Kentucky, and I think this is important because I have to repeatedly take L's when I have a strong opinion on something and I'm proven dead wrong. I have to take an L. And so what I want to do now is not really a mea culpa, but what I want to do now, I want to make a promise to you. Because on this show, I remember after the UCLA game, I said on this show that for years I've always defended Cal because I said there is nobody that is better at every element of being the Kentucky basketball coach than John Calipari. There's nobody better at the media, the PR, the recruiting, the in-game, the out-of-game, the press conferences, the this, the that. And I said after the UCLA game, I said, I can't say that anymore because this is a team that is not only not beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, they're not beating the high-level teams that are elite that Kentucky is defined by. Well, I have made a decision on Kentucky basketball and on John Calipari. I promise you, and I sincerely mean this, I am never going to call for John Calipari's job ever again on this show, and let me explain why. By the way, could be coaching until he's 85, like Jim Boeheim, and I know Jim Boeheim's like 76, but you get the point. John Calipari could be coaching when he's 85 in 2043, and I'm not going to be calling for his job, and let me explain why. It's because as I look at the potential candidate pool out there for the Kentucky job, this is what struck me about John Calipari over the last 2 weeks since that South Carolina loss. Beat Tennessee on the road, beat Texas A&M at home, smack Vandy on Tuesday. They have a team that's potentially good enough to make a deep run in the tournament. And what struck me about John Calipari, if you want to run him out of town, just understand there is not a single coach in college basketball, not a single coach in basketball that you can replace him with that guarantees this. Because if you have John Calipari, sometimes you're going to win the tournament. One time, 2012. It's been 11 years. I get that. But he's made a lot of Elite Eight since then, a couple Final Fours since then, all that. Played for a title in 2014. And what struck me is, essentially, you take out the COVID year and you take out the year after they won the national championship where they lost everybody. John Calipari, every other year, has had a team good enough to win the national championship. And if you run John Calipari out of town, I promise you, there is not a single coach in college basketball that you can replace him with that guarantees you a chance to win the title every single year. Listen, there's a lot of great coaches in college basketball. I'm not going to name them, but do the math in your head. If you could somehow get Billy Donovan out of the NBA, Billy Donovan doesn't guarantee you a chance to win the national championship every year. Scott Drew doesn't guarantee you a chance to win the national championship every year. Kentucky fans, you know who your candidates are. They've had ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. John Calipari for 13 years, if this season keeps going on the way that we think it's going to go on, is going to have a team that's good enough to win it this year. Don't know if it's going to happen. Probably won't because only one team can win it all. But then next year, you're going to have a team good enough to win it as well. So that's my final thought on John Calipari and coach Kentucky and John Calipari. I have been guilty of getting caught up in the moment and saying he's not the guy. I'm never going to do that again because there is no coach in college basketball that guarantees you a chance to compete every single year the way that he does. All right, I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. How about that for a show? Just spitting nothing but facts from a hotel room. That's all I do all day, every day. What a week. College hoops is ramping up, and we are fired up.